Welcome everyone to this session. Today we are talking about, we have this presentation with Karen, where she's going to take us through a journey around coaching and conflict. And this is the part of the MasterClass by Master Coaches Summit that we have, that programming has prepared for us today. And we have a lot of things going on. Obviously, we have Karen right now. We have later in the day Mariana lead at noon, and we have Sofia Chuhas at 5:30. She will be calling us from Australia. Then we have tomorrow, we have Yaya Batija, Des Stephens, and for instance, we have the closing event with Marcia Reynolds on Friday. So there's a lot going on. Go to the calendar, register, and join these amazing sessions, and get whatever you want to get, and get everything that you want to get. So, but going back to today, we are here with Karen White, MCC. Karen is the Director of Training for the Ontological Coaching Institute and co-leads the Certified Ontological Coaching and Leadership Program in South Africa, Europe, and the US. She also offers a developmental, ontologically based coaching mastery program, equipping coaches to holistically expand the range of their coaching and apply for their MTC. This reflects her commitment to robust development for those entering the coaching field. She's a master certified coach with over 4,000 hours of coaching experience at all organizational levels. She is committed to developing effective coaches and supporting leaders in achieving lasting results in all key areas of their lives. Following a 20-year corporate career in strategic and operational leadership, she has dedicated herself to helping individuals thrive, not just survive, by finding meaning and enjoyment in their lives. So, without further ado, I introduce you to Karen White. Karen, the stage is yours.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Gaston, and for the lovely conversation we had a little earlier as well. And welcome to each of you. Thank you for making the time. And I think it was Susan, certainly conflict is something we could all learn to deal with a little bit better. And what I wanted to say is, I was saying to Gaston, when Joanna and I spoke about me appearing, she said, why don't you do something on conflict? I said, sure, let me do something on conflict. And then I thought, oh shit, what have I done? And it's been fantastic, because it's been an opportunity to do a deep dive into thinking about conflict from some different perspectives. And so one of the things I'd like to ask you to do is to think about a conflict situation you have experienced, either something in the past or something that you're experiencing present. A little bit later, provided there's time, I've prepared an approach, but it really will depend on the conversations we have. And it's really nice that it's quite a small group. We can have conversation, but the plan is at this stage that you'll have an opportunity to have a conversation with another person with some questions to help you think a little bit differently and deeply about the conflict. So if you could just keep that in the back of your mind. Let me think if there's anything else I want to say by way of start. So can I just check, who knows what ontological coaching is? If you could just, don't worry to do it with the thing, just put up your hand so I have a sense if everyone knows about it. Okay, all right. So just to know where we're starting. And I will talk, because it's a funny term, people look at me, I don't know if you know the dog look, like kind of when I say I'm an ontological coach, go, huh? So, so what I'm going to do, I do have some slides. I'm going to pop them up on the board. Let me see. Okay, you can see my screen, but that's not going to help. Let me share. It says, there we go. Okay. So to give you a little bit of a sense of what we're going to be exploring today, just do this and make this a little smaller. And what I would say, by the way, is please use the chat. So if you have questions, put it in the chat, or if you have comments, that's part of the richness, I think, of working online. And Gaston, if I could make a request of you, if there's something that's burning that comes up in the chat, if you wouldn't mind just flagging that for me, that would be
Sure.
great. Okay. So what I want to do is first, because most of you don't know about ontological coaching, I'm going to do a very brief intro to ontological coaching and why ontological coaching. And then for you, I asked you to think about a personal conflict. And I'll give you a little bit of time just to write about it in a little while. And then I'm going to offer you some interpretations on what conflict is and potentially represents, both from a sort of a traditional perspective and then from an ontological perspective. And then I'm going to offer you some key areas and questions, so ways we can explore and examine conflict that is not traditional, and that can potentially unlock something different for us and expand our range. And then ideally, you're going to have an opportunity to have a brief coaching conversation about your personal conflict. And I'd love to hear from you what you gained from the session, and then we'll close. And just to say that you're welcome to take notes, and I will also pop this presentation in the chat so that you have it, because at the end there's some takeaway questions that you can use. Because of course we're going to look at ourselves, but this applies to our clients, The reason I like to say let's focus on ourselves is because who and how we are with conflict will determine how comfortable or uncomfortable we are with our clients. So it makes sense to take a little bit of an inward look. So as I said, it's this funny word, the word ontology. So if you go to a dictionary and you look at what it says, ontology is the study of being. And it's about who and how we are being, which, by the way, is informed by everything. So it's informed by our culture, it's informed by our family life, where we grew up, our experiences growing up. So all of that informs our ontology. And so what we're interested when coming from an ontological perspective is helping people understand who and how they are being. And the other side of that is who and how they could become. So if I said to you, are you the same person you were 5 years ago? I've not yet had anyone say, yes, I am. So whether we're aware of it or not, we are always in this process of becoming. And we can have far greater range and choice than we think. And ontological coaching is coaching to way of being. So you'll see on the left, there's behavior, but where does our behavior come from? It comes from our way of being. And what sits in the background of that is our interpretations, our attitudes, our perceptions, and all of that lives in 3 key areas that as human beings we can't escape. So language, we are languaging beings. So we can think about language not as a noun, but as a verb. And language doesn't just describe reality, language also generates reality. So for example, even the word conflict. Each of us, if we went around the room now and I said, okay, so what does conflict mean for you? Each of us will have a different take. And we're going to have a look at that in a little while. Emotions, so the emotions and the sort of underlying moods which we're born into and live in and live from will heavily influence the action we can or can't take. So if we are peaceful about something, how we experience something will be very different than if we're angry. And that's happening all the time in the background. We're not taught to pay attention to our emotions and more than that, our moods, which can often be invisible to us. And then the body. So our body, so our physiology in the moment, so how our muscle tension, our posture, our breathing, all of that will influence our perception. plays a crucial role in our emotional world. And it's basically our body is an embodiment of who we think we are and what's possible for us. So very often what happens in the world in which we live is the focus is on behavior. And behavior is, we can bring about change through behavior, but we call that, in this approach, first order learning. So if you want to change behavior, change what you do, get a different result. However, let's say we've grown up in a house where, for example, conflict was very prevalent and we don't like conflict. It doesn't, we can think, oh, well, next time I'll say what I think. However, our way of being could very well limit us from being able to take different action. So with ontological coaching, we're interested in paying attention, if you like, below the waterline. So I just want to check with you. I'm going to stop share for a minute. So does that make sense to you? Just checking it.
Yeah, yes. Like for me, actually, what you've already shared really helps kind of, you know, the language and emotions and everything going into behavior. I didn't never thought of it that way.
Yeah. Thank you, Susan. I appreciate that. And for most of us, it's out of awareness. And so we can start to become more aware, and automatically that can start to create some choice for us. We don't have to be stuck. So thanks. Yeah, good. I'm going to keep going, and I'm going to put some questions in the chat. So when you think of conflict, what comes up for you? What is your relationship to conflict? How do you approach conflict? And how does your view of conflict influence your coaching? And you're welcome again to pop into the room, and also please use the chat. So I would love to hear what comes up for you with those questions. Some of them, all of them, one of them.
I have a question.
Hello, Shakti. Lovely to see you.
Hi, Karen. I was curious, and maybe I missed it. I apologize because I was a bit late. But how are you interpreting conflict?
It's a really good question. And I will offer some traditional interpretations of conflict, and then I'm going to offer an ontological perspective on conflict. And Shakti, if I can throw that back to you, as any good coach would do, how do you interpret conflict?
So I think my way of thinking, so I have to remove myself from what other people have wanted me to think of conflict. I think of conflict really as it's not connection, but it's a connection where you're not necessarily on the same page and you're unsure how to manage that, or you are sure how to manage it and it's not landing well. There's like it's a miscommunication, or it's a lack of communication, maybe actually.
Super.
And then so to me, it's not always necessarily like something bad, but of course it can be.
Yeah, very much so. And I think so for me, disconnection would be, absolutely, that would be part of conflict. And there's some other interpretations I can offer. So we'll get into that in a little while. And of course, everything that I'm offering is an interpretation. So you might already have some other interpretations of conflict that are incredibly useful for you. So please keep those in the background too. Yeah, thanks, Susan. So super, really good that you know what happens in your body, because that can be an incredibly good signal and can point to something that's important for you. Anyone else with those questions? Barbara, yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking, well, reflecting now, maybe never before, that I can see internal conflict and external conflict when we have conflict with people. and
Yeah.
we have conflict inside ourselves, and we manage them in different way. I don't know. I thinking to my past, I always run away from conflict. I didn't like it. I have a family, a lot of conflict, blah, 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 always discussing. So I didn't want to hear about conflict. So I was the one always trying to bring the peace or to justify or to.
Yeah.
Now I can see I'm evolving in this because I checked already that it doesn't work. So I'm going like more closer to an observation, and maybe I'm waiting, but then I try to bring up the situation and what is making me to be in conflict, maybe some expectation or something. So yeah, this webinar, I think is going to be very useful for me to get closer to what is the right way to manage a conflict with myself and with other people.
Yeah. I think what you're pointing to is it sounds like already your interpretation of conflict is shifting, and that's part of for each of us developing. You know, it's a process. So
Yeah, thank you.
thank you for sharing. And I'm going to keep going now and go back to the slides. Let's see. And hopefully the questions will keep working you. So every now and then I'm a little inept with Zoom, so I've got to do things. I don't know why it's not showing up. I take it you can't see my slides. Is that correct? Can you see my slides now?
Yes, we're seeing
We
the
can see the deck, not
The
the
slide. Okay, great. Thank you. And let me see if I can get, I can't get you as
this.
participant.
This is just the slide that, yes, this is the.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Super. Well, what I'd like to do now is give you a couple of moments. I asked you when you entered the room to think of a conflict you are having or have had in the past. And if you wouldn't mind just taking a few minutes to write down your experience of it. There's no right or wrong. There's no good or bad. Just a little bit of free writing. Could be your relation, how you feel about it, your relationship, what happened, anything that comes up for you. Just to air that, and I'll check in with you in 2 or 3 minutes. you'd like to take another minute and capture the essence of whatever you'd like to capture. Okay, so if you are still in the middle of putting down on paper your conflict, please keep going. And there is a purpose in me asking you to write down, and that is that immediately in the act of writing, sometimes we can observe something differently already. So I'm not going to get into the detail of that, but I did want you to have a couple of moments to do a reflection that's different from thinking about it. And again, at any time, pop in and ask questions. I'm going to now move into sharing a little bit about a traditional perspective on conflict. And then we're going to look at an ontological perspective on conflict. Okay, so again, let me see. Can you see my screen? Just checking. The slides. And sorry, if someone wouldn't mind coming on.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. I think I'm getting the hang of it.
Yeah.
All right. So we've had a look at what is conflict. Love the penguins. I think it's a beautiful representation without getting personal. So a traditional view of conflict. That conflict is a problem to be avoided, managed, or resolved as quickly as possible and at all costs. And again, that's very much informed by our experiences growing up, the interpretations we have about conflict, even what is conflict in terms of the meaning we make of conflict. A clash of interests, and that tends to be it's a win-lose. So if someone's going to win, someone else is going to lose. And I think that's very prevalent in our world today. A breakdown in communication, Shakti, which I think you were talking about. So miscommunication, sometimes even tone of voice can be misinterpreted. And then we start to immediately make meaning and stories about it. Oh no, the person must be cross. And no, there's definitely something wrong here. Conflict is also often seen as disruptive and negative. So it creates tension, it negatively impacts relationships and reduces productivity. A matter of right versus wrong. So similar to win-lose, but it's, my husband sometimes says, sometimes we go to war over who has the bigger imaginary truth. And I think that's such a good way of saying, this is like, it's very binary. It's either right or it's wrong. And we try and make others wrong, or others try and make us wrong. And then, and there are a whole lot of assessments embedded in that. So, or assumptions. And then it's something to control or suppress, because if it comes up, we won't be able to manage. Also, we won't be able to cope. So I think often with this view of conflict, our emotional space is quite limited, because we often find ourselves in anxiety, either in fight or flight. So that tends to be the case with this kind of conflict. And, you know, one of the things, again, to come back to thinking about your coaching clients, what's their relationship to conflict? And do they see it this way? And then how do they see themselves in relation to the conflict, if this is their perspective on conflict? So any questions at this point? Feel free to pop in insights. Okay, I'm going to keep going. So I want to offer you an ontological perspective on conflict. What conflict does is it point, oh, sorry, before I do that, I had written this down in caps, so I'm going to go back, because I do think it is really, really key and it points to how we are with this kind of conflict. When we view conflict in this way, we are at the mercy of the conflict. And really the only thing that is available to us is to react. So we do not have range and choice often here. Very strong emotions. And I did want to highlight that because I think it helps us and can help us also with our clients to help them start to see, like, what other interpretations could there be about conflict? And this is where an ontological approach to conflict comes in. So from this perspective, firstly, we can use conflict to learn. We can use conflict to learn about ourselves. We can use conflict to learn about the other person, and we can use conflict to learn about the situation. So it opens up ways of to start to notice what could be different. And conflict points to something that we care about. And when I thought about what I wanted to offer today, I came to that to be human is to have what is called core and key concerns, things that deeply matter to us, that are often out of awareness, so we're not tuned into them. But we know when things are not working for us, that they come to the foreground, our core and key concerns. And we're going to look at that in quite a bit of detail. And then a breakdown in meaning. So it's often a clash of different interpretations, different assessments. So, you know, if you think about a personal conflict where you just keep missing each other because you have different meaning of what's happening. So for one person, let's say it's a family relationship breakdown. For one person, they think, well, their whole world's coming to an end. And the other person thinks, well, no, it's just a little blip, you know, we'll get through this. We always have. That's a way of making meaning about something. And when we're in that space, we often are not able to see that there could be different meaning and to inquire into that. The language we use and how we use language. So, for example, that would include tone, which is body, but how we describe the conflict. Whether we're able to ask questions or not, for example. Whether we're able to make requests of other people, so to ask for some help, to understand how we listen in a conflict, whether we are able to stay generous and be open and make offers, for example, or whether we come from what I'd call a declarative mindset. This is how it is. This is the only way it is. So we can start to tune in, going back to the diagram, we can start to tune into the language we're using and the language of the other person. And not necessarily just that's the only language that there is. Because in language, most of what we're doing in generating our reality is we're making assessments. And we often don't stop to test our assessments, to test our assumptions. So that's language and our emotions and moods. So as I was saying earlier, you know, if we are calm about something, coming from a mood of acceptance, maybe even enjoyment of life, and we bring that to the situation, we're going to have a very different experience than if we're angry and hostile and bitter, or we just don't think anything is possible. So we're in a mood of what's called resignation, or we're anxious. So we're very concerned about what could happen. We think we could be harmed. So our emotions and moods are going to play a crucial role in how we experience conflict. And then how we have embodied conflict in general. And then how we have embodied this particular conflict. So, and there's an immediate body that goes when something happens. And again, it's something that's habitual and we're often not aware of. So I'm going to stop share and check in with you. Questions, comments, and I hope there's a noise in the background. Someone's sanding or something. I hope you can't hear it. Good. So any insights or questions?
I know it's interesting how you presented what is the traditional aspect of perception or view of conflict, and the ontological view, which offers try to remove a priori this kind of the negatives and trying to add the positives into the conflict.
Yeah.
And the different aspects, including the where in the body does the conflict hides or moves when it happens to you.
Yes. Yeah. And it's all intertwined and often out of awareness for us. So in a way, a traditional view of conflict, if we hold that traditional view, we're going to be one particular observer. And the possibility from an ontological perspective is to start to become a different observer. And being able to explore more. And one of the things I love about this approach is I always think about, we have a way of being and how can we expand our range and choice? So we don't have to be stuck with our old interpretations. We don't have to be stuck with only one kind of meaning. And what that can open up in terms of relationships. So thanks, Gaston.
I really appreciate your this ontological perspective, because in my experience in conflict, that is kind of the reason why something accelerates, or by not attending to the points that are in your ontological perspective, is usually, in my experience, why things accelerate and or potentially become unresolved or remain unresolved. And resolution is maybe a bad word, but they remain misunderstood and just kind of left hanging in the middle without anyone gaining anything from it. And for me, the purpose of a conflict, which I think will always happen at any level, is to find something, some growth, some resolution, some new perspective, or just a recognition that maybe there's some space for change, or a need for change. And I feel like that perspective that you bring forward from the ontological side really hits on that.
Yeah, thanks, Shakti. I think it's what we don't have to be stuck. We can have many more options, and I think that's what this offers. And it starts with ourselves and our relationship with both to ourselves, and then our relationship to the other, and our relationship to conflict itself. So I loved what you brought earlier, where we can start to say, well, what exactly is conflict? What's my interpretation? How do I view it? How do I experience it? So thank you. All right, I'm going to keep going. and move to, and I'll put this in the chat, by the way, when I ask you to have a conversation with another person, to this notion of core and key concerns. And this work is informed by existential philosophy, and one of the heavy-duty philosophers was Martin Heidegger, and he came to the understanding that as human beings, we have things that matter deeply to us, also known as core concerns, that we live most of life not being aware of and not paying attention to. And it's universal. So these core concerns are universal across culture, across social standing. So it doesn't matter what walk of life we come from. We all have these core concerns, and then tightly linked to that are key concerns. And then you'll see in the right-hand column, I've got examples of those. And some of the key concerns I've put in the negative, and some of the key concerns I've put in the positive, and I'm going to take you through them. So the first core concern is belonging. Because if we don't belong and we're banished, we feel excluded, and actually our safety and security is at risk. So belonging is a very, very important part of being a human being. And I mean, it's a simple example, but if, for example, we left out of decision making, or we're ignored in a social setting, and we start to feel isolated. Dignity, and we experience a lack of dignity when we're treated disrespectfully. And you know, there's a quote from a guy that a horse guy, and one of the things he says is, you know, we all want to be seen, felt, heard, and gotten, which I think is such a beautiful way of talking about being treated with dignity and legitimacy. So an example of that would be a sibling is taken for granted in looking after aged parents. Basically, anytime we're taken for granted or our efforts are not seen, and we've put effort into something. And of course, when people say things, you know, that take away our dignity. So if someone insults us, so those are all examples of us not experiencing being treated with dignity. If someone treats us with derision, these are all examples. Legitimacy is the next one. And we don't feel legitimate when, for example, we're not listened to, when we're dismissed. So a key concern is being dismissed by others. Someone's ideas are consistently ignored in a conversation or a meeting. Perhaps they always have alternate views, and they keep being told effectively to be quiet. As I said, when we're not listened to, yeah, someone talks over us, all of those sorts of things. And to love and be loved. So when we feel unappreciated, someone doesn't give us quality time, or someone knows we're going through a difficult time and they don't offer support. And Shakti, you might recall this because we were together a couple of weeks ago. There's a quote by Humberto Maturana, who also, he was a biologist. And one of the things he said that I think is so beautiful is love expands intelligence. So when love is present, we arise as a legitimate other in another person's eyes. So you can see how that goes together. And I might be slightly misquoting him, but that's the essence of also legitimacy. Another core concern is our safety and security. And it's become a big thing, I think, in the world today. So our psychological safety, emotional safety, and physical safety. And an example of that is certainly in terms of psychological and perhaps emotional is fear of judgment or rejection. And yeah, identity. And so here I'm talking more in the positive, so that it's about us being able to freely express ourselves and be authentic. So not be concerned about like, well, I have to show up in a certain way and be a certain way. And the opposite of that is, of course, pressure to conform to societal norms. And whoever has the majority voice, there's going to be pressure for us to not speak out against that, because our identity can be harmed. And I was listening to a great podcast, and the woman, she was talking about, for example, partner choice, you know, when she married someone and her parents didn't approve, and her identity was at stake. Gender identity, career choices. So for example, if a child is growing up in a family home and the parents are adamant that they've got to have a certain career, want them to be a lawyer and they want to be an artist. And that can be, you know, it can seem like, oh, we'll just do the law degree, because if you do the law degree, then you can always go back to art. But for the person, it could be a case of their identity being at stake. And then feeling deserving or good enough. And that's, we believe our thoughts, feelings, and contributions are valid and they're recognized by others. And if we don't feel that, sometimes we can believe we've got to overwork to prove ourselves. We won't make requests of others. We're not saying no. We have doubts within ourselves. And then the last one is making a contribution. So it doesn't matter, again, what walk of life we come from. Everyone wants to feel like their work or efforts have some meaning or impact. A quick story. When I worked in the corporate world for 20 years, and there was a janitor. And he'd been with the organization for many, many years. And after he died, the CEO went to the funeral and spoke about the impact that the guy had made, in the way he went about doing his job, and how he'd have conversations with the CEO, he'd have conversations with everyone. And that was about him being connected to a greater sense of meaning and purpose. And the fact that he was so-called junior really didn't matter. It was about him being connected to contribution. So starting to tune into our concerns is can be very helpful, because coming back to the previous slides, it can point to things that are important and that matter to us. So I worked with a group of people. There were 3 people. They were working in a travel agency. They owned the travel agency, and they were experiencing a conflict. And they said, could I help them? And I said, well, I'm not sure really, but I'll give it a go. And so I met with each of them individually, and I was listening to like how they were being in the conflict, but I was also listening for what mattered to them, what their core concerns were. And for 2 of the people, their concerns were about belonging, because they had started this organization together. So they felt like they really had to belong and stay together. It was also around safety. So, you know, the business had been successful. But for the one person, there was no longer meaning and purpose for her. So she just didn't feel like she was able to make the contribution she wanted to make. And so she kept feeling compromised. And when they were able to have that conversation, so looking at concerns, they were able to see, firstly, and we spent some time helping them focus on how they language things, how they wanted to be emotionally, and how they wanted to be physically. When they were able to have a conversation, paying attention to their way of being and talk about their core concerns, they were able to come to a resolution, not the resolution that they all wanted. So the resolution that they came to was that the one person said, I want to leave. I don't want to be here. And yes, it is going to mean that I'd like to be paid out. And the other people could listen, and they wanted to stay together. So for them, the belonging, and they found ways to deal with their safety. So I just think it's such a lovely example of listening beyond the words, listening beyond the conflict. So, are you all up for an experiment? I can see Shakti nodding, but
Yeah.
you can just give me a thumbs up.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, good. Yay. All right. Because what I'd like to do is to give you the opportunity with this frame in the background to have a conversation with each other. And let me make sure I can share. So in fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just put this, I'm going to put the presentation in the chat when I get there. Sorry, excuse me for 1 minute. You'll bear with me. I'm going to make it easier for myself. Go. Okay. So I've just popped the PowerPoint in the chat and I'll go through it. It's registering that you can see it. So you can download it and have it available, not just now, but after today. So there we go. Okay. So I'll position this. So you're going to have an opportunity in pairs. What I'd suggest you do is just read through the core and key concerns table again. Take a couple of minutes together. And then you can do it one of two ways. You can either, you each have 10 minutes, or if there's one of you that says, actually, I have something, and the other person says, look, I don't really have anything I want to share, then you can use the full 20 minutes. And here are the questions you can use to have a mini coaching conversation. And what I'm going to really encourage you to do is to try and stay away from the issue. So don't get into the detail of the experience and try and be as true as possible to the questions. So the first question, what might this conflict be pointing to that truly matters to you? And this is linking to what are core and key concerns for you. How are your language, emotions, and body showing up in this conflict? So that's about you. And then putting yourself in the other person's shoes. What core concerns might the other person or party have? What key concerns might they have? And then what shared concerns could there be? What is it that matters deeply to both of you or to both parties? How does that impact your interpretation? And then what shifts in your language, mood, or posture could help you approach this conflict differently? I'm going to leave it up for another moment in case you want to also take a screenshot if that's easier for you before I stop share. Okay. Any questions before Gaston does his magic with the breakout rooms?
I have one question, Karen. Do you want to stay in the room? Do you want to be? We are about 10 people, including you. So, what would you?
I think Gaston, if you and I stay out,
Okay,
then that gives equal pairs. That would be great.
perfect.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. And so what we're going to do is we're going to give you a couple of minutes to settle and then 20 minutes for the conversation and bring you back. Do your magic, Gaston.
Abracadabra.
Oh. breakout rooms. Wonderful. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want to pause the recording or shall I?
Hello, welcome back.
Hello.
It's never enough time.
Yes, we're
Oh, Shakti, you always complaining about that. Well, you want to start a quarrel right here, right now?
Are we going to have a conflict? I ask myself.
I'm just sharing what's on my mind. I didn't realize that would be such
You
a
always say what
conflict.
is on your mind.
Well, I'd love to hear, and if you're willing to, each of you, a sentence or two about what you gained from that experience.
Well, I'll start because Shakti was awesome. I didn't get to hear her conflict because mine kind of just ran over. So the 20 minutes went by very quickly. I would say that I had a shift in how my body feels about this conflict. And I think more openness of mind in dealing with it and accepting it. So, and also kind of what I might need to do going forward.
Lovely. Thank you, Susan. And can we pick on you, Shakti, seeing as you're her partner in crime?
Yes, I was going to ask if I could, as the coach in the experiment. I really, really appreciate the sequence of questions that you put out and how beautifully they kind of fed into the need in the moment. And it's funny because I never use, and I'm sure none of the coaches here on this call ever do, use prescribed questions in a coaching meeting. It kind of worried me because I felt a little bit prescribed. But at the same time, it was incredibly powerful. And I felt how there were some other curiosities and questions coming up for me as a coach that I wanted to offer in the moment that I didn't, because I knew we only had a certain amount of time and I wanted to stick to the prescription. But I can see how, what I want to say by that is I can see how intertwining your questions with other things that come up in the moment can lead to even more, right? Depending on the circumstances. So I really appreciate that those questions that you posed for us. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Shakti. And thank you for going with the discipline of it and being willing to explore and experiment. And no problem if no one else did. It's okay. But can I ask each of you, and you can say no, I don't want to comment. So Barbara, if I can ask you.
Yeah, sure. Well, it was really interesting actually. Before I was sharing this thing of internal, external, the thing that was talking our conversation, me and Amelia, was a global conflict. And it reminds us this situation that we have today, the conflict, also many conflicts that we were to manage in the moment of the pandemia, like this thing of many family, people, friends, they had different perception, different opinion, very profound. So it creates these global conflicts, like in terms of very different opinion about something. And yeah, so we were also relating this thing to the moment of the pandemia. And my observation of myself was like that I tried to develop in this case something that is like thinking what I can bring, something good that I can bring in the situation, which is, yeah, trying not to, for the situation to keep away from me my enthusiasm, my joyful, my happiness, but stay in my, I mean, in what I am. So try to continue by the example, to be like, something positive with good energy. So like thinking to my well-being and trying to ripple the effect to the others that may be
Yeah.
in a big conflict in this moment with other people.
Yeah, sounds like, without getting into any detail, but tuning into what's important to you, which is very helpful
Yeah.
for us, because it then helps us just choose what we're going to pay attention to.
Yeah.
And Amelia, can I, again, you can say no, but can I just check in a word or a sentence from you?
Thank you. Sorry, I don't have my camera on, but I'm still on not ready for the day. The kids are on the spring break, so it's a late start for everybody, but I did not want to miss this today. I have to say that I still thank you for this opportunity. As I was sharing with my partner in the earlier, I didn't know how big I felt about this conflict that I have, this right in this moment, and I also share with her, it's not like with one person. Like when I got divorced years ago, it was with one person, and it was easier to look at the conflict and find the solution within. But this one feels like it's multi-level, like with all of the um concerns that you touch in there. I'm like, yep, that one is included. Yep, that one is included. All of a sudden it was just like, whoa, I didn't realize how many multi-level this conflict is. So I have to say that what I got from this is the awareness, and knowing where in my body kind of resides, but also still being, it's almost like a nuclear bomb on its own. It's like all over.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, thank you, Amelia. And I think perhaps just to think about how, because sometimes that, so this sounds like something's been revealed, and how can you take care of yourself as you, with that nuclear bomb and with that growing awareness, and what's the smallest possible step you can start to take to address, it sounds like very intense feelings and deep concerns. So
I think what I have done is pretty much stay on my own and move away from where that conversation or that conflict exists, but it's all around me.
yeah.
So what I have noticed as well is I'm kind of getting myself inside of a little box. And what my partner was talking about, that freedom and that happiness, is like, wait a minute, it used to be before. Now it's very in an isolated way of, in a way, quote unquote, survival
Yeah.
or
Well,
coping.
I send you lots of light as you navigate it.
Thank you.
Claudia, if you popped out of the room, and I was asking if I could ask each person just to share a sentence or two about their experience, and you were on your own. So I'm curious, if you're willing to share, you don't have to, what your experience was.
No, I didn't have a partner, but anyway, I was thinking about this, and I think this approach, the ontological approach, is so helpful. And for me, it was like the conflict is not just in myself. It's some other people involved, and maybe I have some key concerns, but they also have other key concerns. So it's a matter of conversation and communication, and to feel the other and to feel myself, and to read, because it's also like reading the other, reading my client, and trying to feel what they are feeling in order to have a conversation, in order to have a session, or in order to find some options. But I learned that the conflict is not just about myself. I'm not the only one that is feeling, but the other one as well.
That's very powerful. Thank you. Then Olena, Olena, if
Ye-
yeah.
Yes, always correct. Thank you, Karen. We have, I don't know, probably ontological discussion with Manuela, because it's really ontological, because it's connected with conflict of generations, kids and parents. And probably I will start a little bit at the beginning. When I was listening your presentation, for me, always I visualize like two icebergs. Like, for example, we as a coach, we always considering another person, our client, is like iceberg. So we see on the top, but our client can see us also, like on the top, this ice on the top. What hidden under the water, we don't know often. And when we are working in coaching session, always we're trying to touch. And conflict, when I was thinking, what does it mean conflict for me? When I was listening this ontological approach and your explanation, I was thinking, when I'm coming too close or touch not gently, not carefully, another person, another iceberg. And what happened in the sea? When we super strongly touch each other, we can destroy it ourselves. So it's really painful in body, in our mind, in our psychological aspects. If we touch a little bit, some conflicts can like little bit change us, like reform, and we are changing, we make some conclusions and so on. And when we start discuss with Manuela, for me, this is even deeper. It's like about dynamic. This is conflict, like dynamical. And we even found some, I don't know, formula that how kids, the kids changing during their life, and we as a parents also change, now our parents. And when we understand that our role, for example, young mama, and then old mama. So our role always, our role will change. And in this conflict between different layers, levels, I don't know how to call, but this dynamic between two generations, it's really complicated. And we start like with Manuela going deep to this conversation. It was like really great match. I don't know, Gaston really creating magic, because we met each other and start like super easily discuss about these situations. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Elena. What an insightful metaphor, I think. And one thing to briefly reference, Gaston and I were chatting, and what can happen is there can be concerns across generations, but our concerns also can change over time. And so, for example, belonging can be something that's important initially, but as children grow, for example, their identity and being treated with dignity comes to the fore. And sometimes as parents, we can miss that. So this is where this can be really helpful to go, what else might be going on here? And how can I attend to that? I know that we're almost at the top of the hour. So Manuela, if you'd like to say a word or two.
Yes, I felt very seen and listened. And so I think that, and I noticed how having the opportunity to talk about this is important. Oops, okay.
Sorry. No, sorry.
Okay, and so I think that is for me, also looking for help, putting myself in the shoes of the person with whom I have the conflict is very important. But so this widen my perspective, but also looking for another perspective for another person sometimes widen the perspective. So the idea is trying to be. When you talked about the conflict, my image was different. I saw two arrows because I saw the conflict inside myself, not myself with the other person. So I saw two arrows inside myself. Two arrows that they goes in like this, one against the other. And so I thought that if I can open this and be open and open my mind, to the perspective of the person with whom I have the conflict, or they open my mind because I receive help from others, I think that this can dissolve these two forces that are one against the other. And this was my experience.
Thank you. Lovely imagery as well. Seems like the two of you were very well matched. So I just want to share a couple of other things. I know we're at the top of the hour, but I just want to offer you some things. So the first thing is, and we've spoken broadly about this, but some questions, takeaway questions in terms of your learning. And then there are also some takeaway questions that you can use to expand using this. And I really would invite you to play and experiment with the questions, and as you were saying, Shakti, to integrate them, and to see how the questions can, like what magic they can potentially bring. And then if you do want to contact me, here's my email address, my contact number. There are two websites. So I'm the director of training for the Ontological Coaching program and love working in the space. I also have my own practice, and that's the Human Connection. You can contact me on that. I also have a store where I've designed practices based on, working with clients over many, many years. And I don't have one. I might now have one on conflict. You never know. But anyway, you can have a look at that if you would like to. And then upcoming programs, we work in the USA online, and we run a 3-day program over 6 days, and there are the dates. And then I'm passionate about coach development, and so I've got a mastery and artistry MCC. It helps equip people to apply for their MCC, but for me, it's more than that. It's about how do we develop as coaches, and the program is beginning in May. So I just wanted to share that, and to say a very special thank you to Gaston for holding the space, for supporting us, and to each of you for attending. So thank you very much.
My pleasure. No, thank you, Karen, and thank you everyone for joining this session. And we hope that it was super useful for you, and that you have brought for bringing yourself into the session and sharing everything that you have shared in the forum or with the partners. Thank you again, Karen, for your time, for your content. I think it was amazing. So we hope to see you all in other masterclasses that we have this week. Also, I'm sharing the link just in case. I'm not sure if this works. There it goes. This is an event that ICF San Florida is doing in May. Hopefully we can make it. This is a business show that is happening in Miami. It's going to be in person. You can register. We need to collect the number of registrations through this link, so we can get a free booth and be able to have a space in the session. So if you can register yourself, you can share with friends that might be interested or might get us into the number that we need to register. That would be awesome. And also I have left in the chat the survey form, and I will be sending a follow-up email with the link to and with the contact details for Karen. So thanks again, everyone, for your time here. And well, hopefully we see each other again soon. Thank Karen.
Thank you,
Have a great day.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Have a nice day.
Thank you.